Hello, and thank you for joining the DFA Live Strategy Call with Professor George Lakoff and State Senator Nina Turner. Tonight we're going to be discussing Professor Lakoff's updates to his book, Don't Think of an Elephant, and how to take back the messaging frame in 2014 and 2016. Right now, DFA members are joining this call, so we're going to get started in just a few minutes. So please stay on the line. You're in the right place, and it'll just be a moment before we start.
I'm hearing a bunch of beeps. Is that normal?
Yeah, that's normal.
Okay, just making sure.
All right, we're going to get started. So let's do this. Welcome to the call. My name is Charles Chamberlain, and I'm the Executive Director for Democracy for America, which has been empowering over 1 million members across America to fight for progressive change for the last 10 years. That means we've elected over 802 people to office at all levels across this entire country. We truly believe in the 50-state strategy, and we deliver. During this call with George Lakoff, which should last about 50 minutes, we're going to discuss how to win the framing war, and we're going to hear from State Senator Nina Turner about our progressive values-driven campaign to become the Secretary of State in the critical battleground state of Ohio. We'll close by taking a few live questions from members across the country. So if you've joined this call on your phone and would like to ask a question, please press 0 now. If you're listening to this on the live stream, you can send questions to info@democracyforamerica.com or call the number listed above the live stream. And of course, this is Democracy for America, so we're not just talking tonight, we're taking action. That's why we're encouraging everyone listening to sign up and make calls in support of our endorsed candidates in tight races around the country. And in case you didn't know, DFA Dialer, our call from home program, is different than most call programs run by our allies like MoveOn. Our calls are coordinated directly with the campaign, so we're able to share all the info we gather with the campaign, making it easier for them to lock in the volunteers and the votes and get their votes to the polls on Election Day. And on top of that, our program is easy for you because you call into one simple number, and our phone system connects you directly with the voters we need to hit, one after another. No wrong numbers, no answering machines, and no busy signals. And of course, we provide all the call scripts you need and are available to help with any questions as they arise. So frankly, it's a great program, and it's going to make the difference in the critical races we need to win to save the Senate. So you can sign up right now by clicking the link, sign up for a DFA Dialer shift, next to the live web stream, or by going to democracyforamerica.com/win2014. You're going to hear this address a couple times tonight, but I'm going to give it to you one more time right now. That's democracyforamerica.com/win2014. And with that, I'd like to pass this over to our chair, Jim Dean. You here, Jim?
I sure am, and thanks so much, Charles. And folks, I just want to thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules to be on this call and join with us and State Senator Nina Turner, who is running a very courageous and winning campaign, and as well as Professor George Lakoff, the author of Don't Think of an Elephant. I really want to also extend my thanks to both State Senator Turner. This is such an incredible race that she's in right now. She has just been fantastic. She is a great messenger, and the Secretary of State's office in Ohio is critical in the battle for election integrity, in the battle for the rights of voters, and also will be critical in the 2016 elections as well as this year's election. So really, really appreciate State Senator Turner, you're stepping up to the plate on this. And as always, I am also very deeply grateful to the work of George Lakoff. I think many of you remember that the first edition of Don't Think of an Elephant, which came out back in around 2004, it was so incredible to see how many DFA members, DFA groups around the country took this book up and took the work of George Lakoff up for discussion. And in many respects, it sparked a national conversation because it empowered people, just like all of us, to think and discuss issues effectively, but in our own words, versus the kind of scripted talking points that we often get from institutional folks in D.C. or in other centers of power. It was a tremendous tool, if you will, certainly piece of work, body of work, book. And I really believe that the service that George is doing by introducing the next edition right now, Don't Think of an Elephant, is absolutely critical to the work that we do in, again, this year in getting good people like State Senator Turner elected to office, but also in 2016. And so I'm going to first take this opportunity to introduce George Lakoff, who has become so important to the progressive movement, has been so important to helping us talk about issues with other folks, and certainly for me personally, helping me talk about issues to some of the more Republican members of my family over Thanksgiving. But more effectively, I'm on the way out to go canvass and phone bank for the next 2 weeks, and really am very grateful to George for, in a way, holding my hand. So without further ado, again, I would like to welcome and also thank George Lakoff. And George, appreciate your being on with us.
What a pleasure, Jim. It's really a delight to be working with DFA actively again. I've been following all that you've been doing all the way through as a DFA member. Let me begin very briefly with a distinction between framing and messaging. You do framing all the time. Framing is about thinking. It's about ideas. And all ideas are activated, by words. Words mean things. And words are defined with respect to mental structures. If I say something like surgeon, you get an idea of an operation, a patient, scalpels, an operating room, and all the things that go along with that. And certain things are not there. Herds of elephants don't come through the operating room, hopefully, and so on. The idea is that you have a frame is an idea, and that words activate those ideas. And the second thing is that all politics is basically moral. What do I mean? Very simple. If a political leader says, here's my policy, do what I say, the assumption is that it's right, not that it's wrong. They don't say this is wrong, it's evil, do it. And they don't say it doesn't matter, but do it. They do it, say, because it's right. And you have different policies because different political leaders have very different ideas about what morality is and what right is. Conservative morality is very, very different from progressive morality. And the major thing about frames is that they are unconscious and automatic, and you don't notice that they're there. But they are. And what they do is they determine how you think. They are there physically in your brain, and you can only understand what your brain allows you to understand. And if someone hears a fact or a claim that does not fit what their brain allows them to understand, they will either laugh at it, ignore it, or ridicule it, or think it was stupid. And that is why conservatives and progressives talk past each other all the time. The next thing you need to know about frames is that when you negate a frame, you activate it. That's why I wrote a book called Don't Think of an Elephant. It makes you think of an elephant. If you use conservative language, and it will activate conservative frames, even if you're arguing against it. So when you argue against a conservative frame in conservative language, you're basically helping conservatives. You're activating their ideas in whoever's listening to you. That's why it's important to understand your ideas, even though they're largely unconscious, and why it's important to get language that expresses what you really believe. Framing is not about spin. Framing really is about telling the truth, about saying what you believe and being very effective at it. And it's very important to understand what progressives believe in general. For example, what is the progressive moral system behind this? The progressives have a different view of democracy than conservatives do. Democracy for a progressive says that people care about each other. Americans care about other Americans. They care about people in general. And they work through their government to provide public resources for everybody. And those public resources allow you to be free in all kinds of ways. For example, if you are running a business, you need public resources. You need roads and bridges and sewers and electric grids and satellite communications and public education for educated workers and thousands of other things that you need, that you must have, that are there because the public has provided for them. Without public provisions and public resources, you can't run a business, you can't work in a business. You're not free to actually work in any kind of business at all and to make a living. And the same is true of private life. In order to have a private life that makes sense, you're going to need certain things. You're going to need health. You need food that's safe, and then you need to have a Food and Drug Administration to make sure of that. You need to be free of disease, especially now with two diseases coming about in the country. You need the Center for Disease Control. And you need food safety. You need health. You need places to live. You need to be secure in your life. You need workplace safety. You need one thing after another, product safety, all sorts of things that we all provide through the government, but we provide for each other. The government is our resources, and they allow us to be free. If you don't have health care and you get cancer, you're not free. You break your leg, you don't have health care, you can't move. You're not free. If you're not educated, you're not free to understand all of the things that are open to you. You're not free to develop the skills you need to have a fulfilled life. You're just not free. All of these things are required in order to be free. And this is crucial. Freedom is the essential part of what constitutes democracy. And the provision of public resources is crucial. The private, whether it's private enterprise or private life, depends on the public. And conservatives have exactly the opposite idea. For conservatives, democracy means what they call liberty. What is liberty? It means to be free of the government telling you what to do, to regulate things, to provide for you. They believe that if you take public provisions, that you become weaker. They believe that everybody should have personal, not social responsibility. They believe that the government should not be, and other people should not be, providing for people who need help. They should be helping themselves. And moreover, they believe strongly that they don't have a responsibility to the rest of society to help other people, except for their families, of course, and perhaps friends in their community or their church, but mainly, not generally, for society. They think people should be taking care of themselves. The result is that they want to get rid of government resources. Anything that is provided by people through the government, they would like not to have. Those public resources are supposed to be privatized, let go. Public education should be let go. Public health should be let go. All of those things should be eliminated if you are conservative, especially if you're a conservative in the Tea Party part of the Republican Party. So the elections that we are about to have are crucial. It is absolutely important to point out that what democracy is about citizens providing things for other citizens for whether you are starting a business or working in one or have a private life, and that they provide freedom in every area of life. And we're going to go through this in detail when we get into the details of freedom, but virtually everything we're going to talk about has to do with these essential values. Now, why are values important? They're important because they define who you are as a person. It's important because you are what you believe is right. And people vote on the basis of what they think is right, not on the basis of what they think is wrong or doesn't matter. And that is crucial. When you're arguing things and you just try giving the facts without the moral basis are meaningless. They have to fit what is moral about that. And that is absolutely crucial.
George, this is fantastic stuff, and I really appreciate you opening up with that. It's very helpful. I want to give DFA members a chance to make sure that they're getting in their questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take one moment here just to remind everybody what to do. So if you've called in to this call, and so you're on your phone, the easiest way to submit your question is to press 0 now, and it'll take you to a screener where you can talk about your question. You'll still be able to hear the call once you've done it. If you're listening to the live stream on our website, you can send questions to info@democracyforamerica.com, or you can call the number listed above the live stream. So remember, you can either send an email to info@democracyforamerica.com, press 0 on your phone right now, or call the number listed above the live stream, and then we can take your questions. With that in mind, perhaps the best first question to ask you, Professor, would be, what prompted you to write an update? What made you decide that it was time to add new chapters and to revisit the well to get new information out to us?
Well, what happened was very simple. All sorts of things went wrong. For example, in let's say 2008, 2009, after Obama was elected, he took a survey, and the survey indicated that there were certain provisions of a healthcare law that people would want, and that they were popular 60 to 80%. You know what the provisions are. There are no caps, no preconditions. You can put your college-age kid on your health care insurance and so on. And they're still 60 to 80% popular. No conservative ever attacked any of those provisions. No conservative said, yes, we should have caps on how much we spend on cancer, or if you're pregnant, you shouldn't be able to get insurance. Nobody said that at all. What they did was attack morally. They attacked on two grounds, freedom and life. They said this was a government takeover, and it was death panels, and they repeated it over and over, government takeover, death panels, etc. And the president simply repeated the list of facts, namely what all the provisions were. And there were about 24 of them, and he kept listing them over and over. And the result was that people understood the moral issues, and they heard about morality more than they understood what was going on with all of those different provisions. And as a result, the Tea Party started taking over because, why? Very simply, people heard that this was attacking their freedom and through a government takeover, and it was immoral because it was against freedom and life. This is something that should never have happened. The administration should have done better and known better. I wrote about it as soon as it began, but it didn't matter. What happened was that the communication system that came out of the administration didn't work as well as it should have. It needed to work better. And there are many other cases like that we're going to be talking about today, where the Democrats who have learned a certain amount about framing and about messaging, they've learned some of it, but there's more that they have to learn. And the big thing they have to learn is that all the issues are freedom issues.
That's great, and very helpful. Professor, we internally have been trying to figure out why there has been this beeping sound that you mentioned at the beginning of the call. And we actually think it's quite possibly your phone, because when we muted you, it stopped beeping. So what we'd like to do is give you a moment to maybe call in from a different line. And while you do, why don't I jump to Nina Turner and talk briefly about her race for Secretary of State, and then we'll get back into hearing you talk and doing the questions so that hopefully we can fix the problem with the beep. Does that work for you, George?
I'll try it on my cell phone. It's not going to be as good as this, but I'll try. We can get rid of it.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I think that'll work. Thanks so much for doing that. All right. So with that in mind, then instead, what we're going to do real quick is jump to a little bit later in the call. Hopefully, Nina, you're on the line and still ready to go. Are you there, Nina?
I am here.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let me introduce you. So I want to make sure everybody knows who State Senator Nina Turner is. She is a fantastic rising star in the progressive community. She's running one of the most important races in the country. That's for Ohio Secretary of State. I don't know how many people on this call have been following, although I think we're all political junkies, so we're pretty aware of how bad it is in Ohio when it comes to their track record of Secretary of States that have just used the law or manipulated the law to disenfranchise voters and make it much harder for Democrats to win, when the reality is we have the votes to make it happen. Nina is running a fantastic campaign. She's been really delivering and out there. She's been a strong voice for our progressive ideals, and when she wins this election, it's going to make a difference. That's why we've already called from home for her doing the DFA dialer. We've made over thousands of calls into her district, and that's also why she's a Dean Dozen candidate for us. That's our top-tier endorsement, where we do the joint endorsement with Governor Dean, our founder, and DFA. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome you to the call, Senator Turner. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Charles, and a special thanks to Jim and certainly Governor Dean and for DFA for all that you do for Progressive Voices, and just really listening to the professor talk about our framing as progressives, that we should be unapologetically progressive and to push forward, and that we are all better together. And that is why I am running for Secretary of State in Ohio. Ohio is the swing state of swing states, and as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. And unfortunately, all across this country, Republicans are doing everything that they can to take our country, our great nation, back in time. Now, all of us here, we understand that our country did not start off on the right footing. Everybody wasn't equal when we started. But one thing we can say about the United States of America, we have been a nation of progress, and it is up to progressives to continue to stand up and to speak up. And the greatest equalizers that we have, where your socioeconomic status doesn't matter, your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, none of that stuff matters. When we go vote, we are all equal. And it is more than unfortunate. It is un-American. I say it is immoral for any elected official to use their power to try to take that away. And that is happening in Ohio. And many of you may be aware of the latest court case where the current Secretary of State, who is a Republican, appealed all the way to the United States Supreme Court 16 hours before early voting was supposed to start in this state last Tuesday. He requested an emergency stay to take away Golden Week from voters in this state and to take away evening hours and Sundays. And again, this what he did, along with the Attorney General, has a disproportionately negative impact on African American voters, low-income voters, and homeless voters. This lower court sided with the plaintiffs in this case, which was the ACLU arguing on behalf of the NAACP, some African-American churches, and the League of Women Voters. And it was a righteous fight. We won on the lower court, but at the last minute, the current Secretary of State got that stay. And so we have less voting opportunities in the state of Ohio than we did the year before that and the year before that, and that is wrong. You know, Dr. King defined it very clearly that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And because there is a correlation between the ballot box and the bread box, because we are interlinked to our neighbors, if they are doing well, we do well. If they're not doing well, we don't do well. If our children are being educated, we are creating a great nation. If we are taking care of our elderly population, we are creating a great nation. If we're not doing those things, then we are not. And for the first time in our country's history, our middle class, America's middle class, is not the wealthiest. All of that is tied to the types of people we elect to office, and that there is no such thing as an off-year election. Every single year we must be on and popping, and that electing a school board member is just as important as electing the President of the United States of America. And we cannot jump over 2014 to get to 2016, and that's why what DFA does, and for all of you on this phone, is so important. I can win this race in the great state of Ohio. I am in a statistically dead heat with my Republican opponent, but I need help from progressives all across this country, and that's why I want to thank DFA. And would you please, please, please consider being part of the DFA dialer, because for every progressive that you help win races across this country, we help the greater whole. We are better together. We are our sisters and brothers keepers. And voting, democracy, our democracy is stronger when people can exercise their right to vote, both great and small. And I don't know about you, but I am sick of elected officials that preach a gospel of scarcity when it comes to the 99%, but a gospel of prosperity when it comes to the 1%. It is wrong. We must continue to stand up. We must continue to fight, and I will win this race, become the next Secretary of State of the great state of Ohio. As Ohio goes, so goes the nation. So thank you again so much, DFA. Please support the DFA dialer. We need you. There are progressive candidates all over this country who need your help. The best way to build a house is not from the top to the bottom, but it's from the bottom to the top. We need strong foundations from local, regional, state levels of government all the way up to the presidency. But we cannot get that unless progressives fight the good fight.
Wow, that's excellent and well said. Absolutely well said. The web address you can go to sign up for the next DFA dialer shift is democracyforamerica.com/win2014. So that's democracyforamerica.com DFA.org/win2014. If you go to that website, you can not only sign up for DFA Dial or Shift, but you can also click the links to find our endorsements above, and you can contribute directly to Nina Turner's campaign as well. Nina is running a fantastic race. She really needs our support, and it's not just calls. When we can contribute to candidates, it does help make a difference. So please keep that in mind. And supporting all the progressive candidates we've got going. So thank you very much, and Nina, I very much appreciate you taking a moment to talk about our race, and I'd like to have you stay on the line for questions as we go to members for questions. George, are you back on the line?
I'm back on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic, and the beep is gone, so it looks like we've solved it. Thanks so much for doing that. George, I know that the next question I actually already had in the queue was members were asking, evidently Bernie Sanders has started using a phrase where he frames the economy by calling it the Walmart economy. And members are wondering what you think of that framing. Is that a good way of using your messaging tips, or weak, or any thoughts you have on that? We'd love to hear.
It's very weak because most of the people experience Walmart by getting low prices. When he talks about the Walmart economy, he's talking about people who are already progressive, who understand what Walmart is doing both in other countries and to its own employees, and how badly they're treating people, and how they're squeezing money out of all sorts of folks. But most people don't know that. Most people think of Walmart as a place where they just save money and they get cheap goods from other countries. And that's fine with them. And I don't think that's going to work, to be honest. I don't think you're going to convince one conservative that the Walmart economy is a bad thing.
Excellent. That's really great to hear your feedback on that. It's funny, when I heard it earlier today, I thought it sounded smart, and then hearing your thought on that, that's also really smart. It really goes to show how important framing is and how it works. With your brain, I went straight to the thinking of, oh, well, Walmart's terrible, and Walmart is ruining our economy because of their low wages. But you're so right that for the people that are less politically engaged, it makes sense. They think low prices. Really, really fantastic answer. I would like to take a question from our members, and I think this first question that I have might actually, it could go for either one of you potentially, because I know that, Ms. Turner, you've got pretty hardcore Republican opposition. So we have Frederica Pura, I believe, I probably butchered your name. Are you on the line, Frederica?
Yeah, it's actually Federico. Yeah, it's
Federico, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Professor Lake, Nina Turner, I'm impressed with you. I will look you up and try to contribute any way I can. I'm very, I've been following you, Professor Lake, for a long time. I love your work. You woke us up many years ago. So I have a question. In trying to activate frames surrounding shared responsibility, unity, empathy, I wonder, and in trying to define the opponent, I wonder what would be a good phrase to use, similar to extreme individualism, or maybe extreme individualism works, or go at it alone, type of thinking, go at it alone, or extreme individualism. And then I also have another thing let me just ask you two other things very quickly. So the other thing is for as far as the people in terms of foreign policy, the people who are trying to push for a ground invasion in the Middle East, is basically boots on the ground, the toxic metaphor on that. And then a third question is in terms of with the word abortion, should we be focusing on unintended pregnancies, or is that the term that you prefer? Or what about accidental pregnancy? Or I've heard unwanted pregnancy. But that doesn't work for me very well. But so I'll just be quiet and listen. Okay.
Thank you very much for your questions. They're good, very good and important questions. The issue in all cases, in every progressive issue, just about, is that Americans care about other Americans, and they through their government, provide resources, public resources, that allow both businesses and private lives to flourish. And they provide for freedom in all of these cases. And freedom is what's important here. What conservatives want to do is get rid of those public resources and therefore get rid of freedoms. The freedoms that we have to have public education, the freedoms to have adequate health care, the freedoms to have decent working conditions, and particularly for women, the freedom to control your own body. The freedom to control your own body, whether it's sex education, which is necessary, whether it's birth control pills, whether it's family planning information. But the word abortion has in it a view that conservatives have put on. That is, they think of abortions not as, women controlling their own bodies and as, mainly preventing pregnancies, but also they think of it as killing babies when they're not babies yet. They're not born. And this is a very important kind of thing. You do have fetuses, and things like partial birth abortion don't exist pretty much. They're rare, and only in the case of the mother's life and being in danger, and in case of the baby being born without a brain, pretty much. What you have is a distortion of these things. Freedom is crucial. The freedom of every person, man or woman, to control our own bodies. And that is a freedom you don't want to take away. You don't want anybody else controlling your body. It's that simple, straight on. In terms of what you don't want to talk about individualism. Individualism sounds like a nice word. Gee, I'm an individual, I count, etc. And you do count. Your freedoms count. Your private life counts, and that is made possible. You are made free as an individual because of public resources. The private depends on the public. We all are in this together. It is through what we do together, just as Nina Turner said perfectly well, beautifully, because what we do together, we are free both as individuals, we are free in a country, and we are free as citizens, and we are free to run businesses and work in them. That's what free enterprise is about. Public resources allow free enterprise. You don't have it without public resources. Now, the issue of boots on the ground is not a terribly good metaphor for this, because as soon as you talk about war, you have boots on the ground, and you have, if you're going to talk about attacking and use other words that attack war, you're going to assume that, and if you've got 1,600 military personnel who are, quote, advisors in Iraq, of course they're going to have their boots on the ground. It's not exactly the best way to talk about these issues. The issue has to do with how we are defending freedoms in every place we can, for as many people as we can, as effectively as we can, with whatever really works. And the question is, what works in defending freedoms and making people more free? That is what is involved here. And the question of should we have soldiers going in and fighting on the ground has to do with the fact that, one, they're not very effective. They were not effective in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they would be kind of disastrous, and it would kill lots of people of our kind. And not only that, it would they wouldn't work very well. Basically, people in Iraq have to be taking care of Iraq. And yes, they need help, but calling it boots on the ground is just asking for trouble, because as soon as you even raise that phrase, you're thinking of soldiers and you're thinking of war. As soon as you say boots on the ground, you have a war image. Even if you say no boots on the ground, it's like saying don't think of an elephant.
Excellent. That's a really great answer and much appreciated. And the next question I have here is for Nina Turner. a member asked, how do you fight back against the Republican talking points that are attacking voting rights? My guess is that probably both of you could answer, but maybe Senator Turner, if you could answer first, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just reminding people that, the greatest equalizer that we have in this nation is the whole notion of one woman, one man, one vote, and that is vitally important, and that it is very much American. A lot of times Republicans try to steal patriotism from progressives, and they want to define what America is. Well, it doesn't get much more American than being able to exercise your fundamental right to vote, and that nobody should stand in the way of your ability to shape your vision through the power of your vote for your community, your state, and your nation. I mean, I even tell them, listen, I'm standing up for people's right to vote. I am a proud progressive, but it doesn't matter to me whether you lean red or blue, a little country, a little rock and roll, a little R&B. I just want you to be able to vote, and no one should stand in the way of that. And most people, when you break it down to them in that way, that there is a correlation between the bread box and the ballot box. If you care about your schools, you must vote. If you want your roads paved, you must vote. If you care about a woman's right to control her own body or make dollar for dollar as a man, you must vote. If you care about voting, you must vote. And so I really try to talk to the person from where they are and the issues that they care about, and then I draw it back to the ballot box, because everything starts and ends at the ballot box.
That's fantastic
Absolutely.
thinking. Yeah, you have anything to add, George?
Yeah, she's exactly right. Let me add a couple of small things. When she said no one should prevent voting, should stand in the way, the issue of voting is access. Do you have access to vote? If you are at work and you lose your job if you go to vote, you got a problem. That stands in the way of voting. If you have a family to take care of and you can best vote on Sunday, that gives you access to vote. You want to maximize access. You might want to have votes sent in by mail balloting. That gives you access. What you want to do is maximize voting, and you want most people to vote. Everybody who can vote should vote, and without anything preventing them. And quote, as Nina said, without anything standing in the way and preventing access. And access comes in many forms. And Nina is absolutely right, because what happens in elections is that determines public resources. It determines whether you have public resources that allow you to live a decent life privately and in business, and it allows you freedoms of dozens and dozens of kinds. Freedoms that are absolutely necessary to earn a living. In this nation, if you can't get an education, it's very hard to get a job. It's very hard to do all sorts of things without skills. And if you don't have money, if you're not being paid well, if you have to take 2 or 3 jobs, then your kids might not have enough money to go to college. You might not have enough money to get trained well, and so on. This is absolutely important. Having resources is crucial. Getting paid for what you earn is crucial. And it's important to think this way. As she said, most of the money coming into our economy, 90% of it, and since the crash of 2008, most of it's gone to the top 1% or 1/10 of 1%. The ratio of CEO pay to, the pay of an ordinary worker is about 350 to 1. Now, try to conceive of it. Think of a line that's 350 times longer than another line. Can you imagine it in your head? No. It is hard to even imagine that. It's hard to get a mental image of it. The staggering difference is beyond imagination right now, and it is so huge, it's remarkable. But there are a few things that are important to remember. First, working people are profit creators. They like to think that people who are very wealthy are job creators, but in fact, it's people who spend money who are the job creators, and people who work who are the profit creators. And if you're creating profit, you deserve a part of it. You deserve a reasonably fair share of it. And wages have gone down, not up, in the last 30 years. This is not, a fair thing at all, and you should be able to take home a reasonable amount of what you earn. Right now, we don't have that. A lot of corporations have a metaphor for ordinary working people. They have two kinds of employees, the assets and the resources. The assets are the top management and the creative people they absolutely need, and the resources are people who are interchangeable, who are hired by the human resource department, and who can be just fired or hired at will. And what do you do with resources in a corporation? You buy them as cheaply as possible, and you use as few as possible. If you can fire people and lay them off, you do. They're just resources. If you can pay them less, you do. They're just resources. We have to stop the very idea of the human resources department, of the idea that ordinary people working who are profit creators for businesses, they're not just resources. They make this economy go. They're people who have families, who should be treated with respect. And here you have an issue of unions. If you don't have unions, what happens? You become wage slaves. That is, you are subject to corporate slavery. That is, you have to take whatever you're given, and you can be treated as resources, not as people with respect and as people who need a living wage. Those views are crucial. We have to understand why unions are important, what they do, how they contribute to our freedoms from corporate servitude. We don't want to be serfs of other companies who can just say, oh, no, we can lower your wages, we can get rid of pensions. What are pensions? A pension is work, it's payment for work already done in the past. And if people say, well, we don't know if we can pay all your pension funds and so on, or you should pay part of your own pension, that's what they're doing is taking away payment for work already done. It's called theft. That is crucial. We need to understand what pensions really are in this case, their commitments, their contracts for work already done. And you need to understand what it means to be a working person. You're a profit creator. And you have to understand what work is about. Work is about doing something meaningful in your life and being able to provide for your family and provide for yourself. This is crucial in everything we do, and the economy should be reflecting that. And the question is exactly how we do it. And the first thing is to understand where the profits are going. Where they're going is not where they ought to go. And then there's a question of what tax law can do about it, what blocking tax loopholes can do about it, and what other kinds of financial legislation is necessary.
That's great, George. I really I think that your frame of profit creators is just really smart, and I can't believe that over the last year where we've heard, or 2 years, where we've heard this constant rant about job creators, that we haven't heard people talk about profit creators. That's just a fantastic way to frame it. I would definitely like to go to, we've got a question from Stephanie Lowe in New York City. I think it's a great question for you that's probably on the minds of a lot of our members. Stephanie, are you on the call?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Lowe in New York City, and actually my question is to both George Lakoff and Senator Turner. This is a personal question. Do you think a progressive can ever change the mind of a conservative? It's personal because my brother, whom I deeply love, is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, and of course I'm not. How can I talk to him?
Very important. And by the way, there's a chapter at the end of the all new Don't Think of an Elephant on how to talk to conservatives. The first thing to understand is that conservatives are working on a moral principle. They really believe certain things. And this comes from a view of the family that's very different. We have two major family models that are out there. For conservatives, it's what is called the strict father model, where you have a father knows best principle, in which the father is responsible for teaching his kids right from wrong, assuming that they're born bad and have to be made good and have to be therefore disciplined, often physically disciplined, as you saw in the case of Brian Anderson recently. where he said, I was just teaching my kid right from wrong with a switch. And in many parts of the country, conservative families use branches of trees to discipline their kids, to hit them. That's, that's part of a strict father upbringing, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's not that strong. But important, the idea is that the father is in charge of the family and has the responsibility to support the family and protect the family and to make sure there's order in the family and that it functions. And that, therefore, he has the right to tell everybody what to do. It's my way or the highway. And that is to be enforced physically, if necessary. Now, that is a very different understanding. And by the way, when kids grow up, they're supposed to become their own strict fathers and mothers and take care of themselves. The principal idea in the logic is this. If you discipline your child, and they learn to do what's right, then they can use that discipline to go out into the world to become prosperous because they're disciplined. And what if they're not prosperous? That means they're not disciplined, which means they can't be moral and deserve their poverty. So everything is a matter of individual responsibility, not social, but individual responsibility. And then you have a nurturing parent family, which is the opposite. It says, look, you have two parents, they have equal responsibility. Their job is to empathize with their children, to know what their children think, how they feel, to be honest with them, to answer all their questions, and to protect them, to not just let them do just anything, namely to tell them why they have to, not touch the hot stove or run out into the street or be home at a certain time of night, because it's important, and you have to tell them why, but you have to be responsible. And you can't be responsible for someone else if you're not taking care of yourself. You have to both take care of yourself and take care of your children. And you need what President Obama called a principle of excellence. You have to do as much as you can, as well as you can, because both you and your children are supposed to be fulfilled in life. Fulfillment in life takes work. It takes discipline, but discipline of a different kind, not discipline that comes from being beaten or punished, but discipline that comes from caring and being responsible toward others. And what you do in a nurturing parent family is you raise your children to both take care of themselves, to take care of others, to empathize with others, and to be fulfilled in life, and to have a principle of excellence about their lives. That's what that kind of family is about. Now, what's interesting is that many people have experience with both kinds. And in fact, and these families map onto conservative and progressive principles in politics. That is, conservatism is basically a strict father enterprise, and progressivism is a nurturing parent enterprise. But what was interesting about this from the point of view of the brain is that many people are both. They're what I call biconceptuals. They can have both moral systems and flip back and forth between them. And not only that, they can apply them to different things. So you can be conservative about financial issues and progressive about social issues, or the reverse. And what's interesting is what is called a moderate is not a set of principles. There's no ideology of the moderate. What's called a moderate is that if you're a moderate conservative, you're mostly conservative, but you're partly progressive. You're progressive on some things. If you're a moderate progressive, you are mostly progressive, but you're conservative about some things, and that this is normal. It is kind of there all the time. And even relatively extreme conservatives are progressive, that is, nurturing within their families, within their communities, and so on. And this is a very important thing to understand. It's rare to have people who are conservative on many political issues who are never nurturant on anything. They're nurturant on all kinds of things. So when I have students who tell me, I'm going home for Thanksgiving and I dread it, I'm going to have this big argument with my grandfather or my aunt or my cousin or whoever, what I tell them is very simple. I say, grandfather, Aunt so-and-so, Aunt Susie, tell me, what have you done that has helped other people that you're really proud of? What are you proud of that has really helped other people? And what happens virtually every time is I get students coming back saying, I didn't know that my grandfather did at least 3 terrific things. I may disagree with him on all kinds of stuff, but there are three things where he's been really very good at. And I suggest to them, keep talking about those things. Because when you talk about things to people who are partly progressive, and most people are in some way or other, what you're doing is activating the nurturant parent part of their brains, the nurturant part of the brains, the part of the brains that care about other people. And that makes them more progressive. It makes them more caring. That's how I suggest you talk to conservatives. And talk to them with respect. And by the way, I want to say that about respect, because they're coming from a moral position that they really deeply believe. And if you think about conservatives in this country, a lot of liberals will think, well, they're just not informed, or they're stupid, or they're mean, or they're greedy, when in fact they have a morality they actually believe in. And that is why a lot of poor conservatives vote against their interests. They're voting for a moral system they believe in, and that defines what their identity is.
George, I think that this is one of the best sections in your book, and I really want to encourage everyone on this call. If you haven't bought the book yet, you should buy it. If you have bought it, this is a section, absolutely must-read section. You should memorize it. Really great thoughts that you have there, George, and they really make a lot of sense. Nina, if you're still on the call, I know Stephanie was interested in hearing your thoughts on how you could answer the question of, is it possible for progressives to actually change conservatives' minds? How should somebody talk about, say, your race to their conservative brother-in-law who lives in Ohio?
Well, thanks for that, Charles. And I certainly agree with the professor. I distill it down to talking to people's hearts and not their heads, and finding what you have in common. So I just want to give you a very real example. When I am on the stump and I'm talking to labor groups, and a lot of labor groups, especially if they're safety forces, they tend to lean very conservative. And so I talked to them about what happened in our state in 2011 when Republicans attempted to take away their collective bargaining rights. Not attempted, they did take away those rights via the legislature, and we had to collect signatures and put a referendum on the ballot. And we were able to get over 60% of the voters in this state to side with the House of Labor, public sector workers. Now, all 60% of those folks do not belong to the House of Labor, but we were able to talk to their heart. But what I say to my conservative brothers and sisters in the House of Labor is I want them to remember what they went through in 2011, where we all had to bind together, both those folks who are protected by labor unions and those who are not, based on what we have in common, that workers should have the right to sit across the table from management as equals and to bargain for wages, to bargain for conditions. And so I say to them, I want you to remember, if somebody walked into the room tonight and put both their feet on your neck and tried to choke the life out of you, you would never forget that for 1,000 lifetimes. So why is it that you would forget that the people who've been elected to office to create pathways of opportunities for all of us, pathway of opportunities for your children so that you can feed your children, so that you can pay your mortgage, so that you can send your children to college, so that you can live a good life. But through public policy, they try to take that away from you. You should vote your self-interest, your family's interest, and not lean to one political ideology. Now, they visualize that quite clearly, and they all get the message. So that's just one example of how I communicate with people who may not necessarily be as progressive as I am. I touch their heart, and I meet them at their self-interest, because everybody, whether we're progressive or not, people are self-interested, and self-interest does not have to be a negative. We want people to be self-interested in a way that helps the greater good, and we have to remind people that we are all in this together, and that whether you are Republican or Democrat, liberal, progressive, or somewhere in between, if somebody is trying to take away the livelihood of your family and your children and your community and generations unborn, that you have an obligation to stand up for that.
That's fantastic, and you've got me energized and excited, which gives me a really great point for me to. I want to make sure that everybody in this call remembers we're not just talking about winning back the frame, but we're actually doing something about it. That's why we're encouraging every single person, everyone who's joined us tonight to listen to this call. we need you to sign up for DFA Dialer too. We need you to make phone calls. Democracy for America is working to elect progressive candidates up and down the ballot by making these calls through the program. All you need to have is a computer and a phone, and you can help turn out voters across the country. So to sign up so you can get started right away, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, we're calling for Bruce Braley in Iowa to make sure that we win against that terrible Tea Party candidate that believes that we should impeach the president, thinks we should cut Social Security. We can beat her with a fantastic Democrat, Bruce Braley. We're making those calls tomorrow night. And on Thursday, we're going to be calling for Shenna Bellows in Maine, who's up against Susan Collins, who is not the moderate that she has a reputation for. She votes for the Tea Party every time. She voted to shut down the government, not once, but twice over Obamacare. These are two great Senate candidates, and it's an incredibly important time for us to do everything we can, pull out all the stops to make sure that we hold the Senate on November 6th and keep it in Democratic control. So to sign up right now, you need to go to democracyforamerica.com/win2014. So that's democracyforamerica.com/win2014. If you go there, you can sign up for your DFA Dialer shift now. And once you're there and you're on the website, don't hesitate to look up all of our Dean Dozen candidates, which include Nina Turner, who's running for Secretary of State in Ohio, has been fantastic on this call, and you know, your support for her, both in making calls and in contributing to her campaign, can really go a long way. So with that, I'd like to wrap up the call. I want to thank Professor Lakoff for joining us. I want to really encourage as well that people buy the book. You can buy the book through Democracy for America. When you buy it through us, the contribution that you make, we then give you the book for free, and the contribution, the amount that you pay that is over what you would pay for it at Amazon.com, is a contribution to DFA that supports the work we're doing. So it's very helpful. So I really would love to encourage everyone to buy the book through DFA by doing a contribution, and we give it to you. That said, if you want the book right away and you don't have the resources to give us a little bit extra money to help support this campaign, you can also buy George's book directly through Amazon.com or through Pal's Books or one of any other number of websites that allow you to buy the book directly. So I really want to thank you, Professor Lakoff, for being on the call today. Thank you. And I want to thank you, State Senator Nina Turner, for being on the call and really firing us up to make sure we win in November. Again, thanks everybody for being on this call, taking time to listen into the strategy. I hope we learned some really good things tonight. I tried to get to as many questions as we could, and I want to thank everyone for participating. Let's go out, let's win this. Let's have a lot to celebrate in November. All right, thank you.
And one more thing. Remember what Howard Dean has been saying for many years. You have the power. Individuals matter. You do.
That is so right. What a great way to finish it. Thank you very much, Professor Lakoff. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call.